Peace Queens, Toyaparadisa here with Tpmindsetcoach with Chapter 4, our bonus chapter, Knocking Down Your Barriers. Now, there are plenty of reasons why a person would not want to be themselves fully. According to the Physician and Psychiatrist Dr. Pierrakos, there are main experiences that create barriers to be our true selves. These barriers are 5 wounds. These 5 wounds were popularized by the famous French author Lise Bourbeau. Those wounds are abandonment, rejection, injustice, humiliation, and betrayal. Let's start with a quick assessment. This will help you determine which wounds are the most significant barriers to your growth and expression of your true self. Now, every question I read, there is a wound or several wounds that are indicated by a letter. Example, letter A would be for abandonment, B will be for betrayal, R for rejection, I for injustice, H for humiliation. Remember, just focus on answering yes or no to the question for now. You will hear me call out the letters associated to the question. This will help you at the end of this exercise to calculate how many A's and B's and R, I, H that you have received, and you will know which category you're in. Okay, so bear with me. Let's get right to it. First question, do you feel like a victim regularly? Parentheses, the letter A. Yes or no? As a child, did you ever feel that you were not wanted? Letter R. Yes or no? Do you lack self-confidence? Letters A, R, H, and I. Yes or no? Do you regularly seek solitude? Letter R. Yes or no? Do you do the tasks slowly? Letter H. Yes or no? Do you find it difficult to ask for help? Letter I. Yes or no? Do you think you're stable and very responsible? Letter B. Yes or no? Do you want to be important in life? Letter B. Yes or no? Do you regularly doubt your choices? Letter I. Yes or no? Do you stress or get nervous before you speak? Letter R and I. Yes or no? Do you feel anxious before you go on a trip or facing a change in your life? Letter A. Yes or no? Do you use drugs or alcohol all the time? Letter R, A, and H. Yes or no? Do you like acting? Letter B. Yes or no? Do you always need a presence around you? Letter A. Yes or no? Do you feel the need to help others all the time? Letter A, H, and B. Yes or no? Are you regularly convinced you are right? Do you try to convince others? Letter B. Yes or no? Are you demanding on yourself? Letter B and letter I. Yes or no? Do you like everything to be in order around you? Letter B and letter I. Yes or no? Do you generally distrust others? Letter R, B, and I. Yes or no? Do you take care of other people's problems before you take care of your own? Do you take care of others more easily than yourself? Letter H. Yes or no? Do you often blame yourself? Do you regularly feel guilty? Letter R, A, H, and I. Yes or no. Do you regularly have breathing problems? Letter R, A, and H. Yes or no. Do you often have low blood sugar? Do you have diabetes? Letter R, letter H, and letter H. Letter R, A, and H, forgive me. Yes or no. Do you often have body tensions? Letter B and I. Yes or no. Are you hypersensitive to being dirty? Like take a few showers a day, you hate having your hands dirty, etc.? Letter H. Yes or no. Do you easily give up a project, a goal along the way? Letter R. Letter A. Yes or no. Are you impatient, refusing the slowness of others? Letter B. Letter I. Yes or no. Are you bulimic, or do you struggle with an eating disorder? Letter H. Yes or no. There you go, Queens. Thank you for bearing with me. Now, the scoring, calculate all the yes for each letter. Rejection is letter R. How many letter R's do you have on 10? Letter I, injustice. How many letter I's do you have on 10? Letter H, humiliation. How many letter H you have on 10? Letter A, abandonment. How many letter A's do you have on 10? Letter B, betrayal. How many letter B's do you have on 10? Okay, take your time to do this exercise, write it down so it will be easier for you. Okay, now that you can see which wound has the most yes out of 10, let's explore each one of those obstacles in your life and help you understand those deep wounds. Even if you didn't score high on some wounds, read the content because you might still relate with some of the information provided. Okay, let's start with rejection. Now, rejection is a profound wound because the one who suffers from it feels rejected in his being and especially in his right to exist. Therefore, it is practically impossible to be yourself when you wear that wound. It is not unusual for people who feel rejected to have a fleeing physique. That is to say, a body or a part of the body that seems to want to disappear or become very small, as if the receding person wanted to go unnoticed for fear of being rejected. In terms of behavior, they often doubt their right to exist. They seek solitude because if they receive a lot of attention, they would be afraid of not knowing what to do. They can be fleeing, which is why they prefer not to get attached to material things because it would prevent them from running away. They often wonder what they're doing on this planet and finds it hard to believe that they could be happy here and bring something to this world. They don't know what to do with themselves when they get too much attention. In relationship with others, they are constantly finding ways to seek love from the parent of the same sex and will reject themselves from a person of the other sex, often feeling guilty when they face rejection. It is not unusual for them to live in ambivalence when they are accepted. They won't believe it and often create a self-sabotaging situation so that others reject them. Their biggest fear is panic and anxiety because that often arises in them when they are rejected. Okay? This hit close to home for me. Okay, so just to share that with you, Queen. So just be open and honest with yourself. Okay, that helps you to heal and get really deep into knowing what you need to work on. All right, so let's go on to injustice. The wound related to injustice is intimately linked to the wound of rejection. While rejection touches deeply the being, the wound of injustice touches on having and doing. So people who have that wound often has a body rigid and as perfect as possible. They have a well-proportioned body, rigid movements, stiff neck, and very proud. They're usually lively persons with dynamic movements, but who is rigid and lacks flexibility. Often a perfectionist and envious. These persons tend to cut themselves off from their feelings and often cross their arms. They try to be perfect and justifies themselves a lot. They find it difficult to admit that they have problems. They often doubt their choices. They like order and tend to control themselves by demanding a lot from each other. They can be angry and cold and has difficulty showing affection. They don't want to be late, but will often be delayed because they take a long time to prepare. It is often difficult for people with the injustice wound to accept compliments, help, or gifts from others because they feel in debt toward the person after. Their biggest fear is when others are cold toward them, because that awakens the unfairness, but is also a reflection of their shadow. Okay, these are all hitting home for me, right? These two first ones. So it's really important to observe yourself, analyze yourself, to be the best version of yourself so you can attract the right people, and look at yourself in the relationships that you're in. When you see these things are rising, you can choose with time and practicing new habits, you can become better, right? So let's go on to humiliation. This wound is mostly related to the physical aspect of having and doing. Most individuals with the humiliation wound have a larger and round body, round face with a broad and rounded neck. They are often ashamed of themselves and others, or afraid to shame others. They think they are dirty or unclean. They don't want to recognize and assume their sensuality and their love of the pleasures associated with the senses. That is why they often compensate and reward themselves with food. And they gain weight quickly to give themselves a reason not to enjoy their senses. They are also afraid of being punished if they enjoy life too much. So they ignore their freedom by putting the needs of others before their own so that they stop enjoying life. Most individuals with the humiliation wound want to do everything for others. In reality, they want to create constraints and obligations for themselves to stop enjoying their freedom and life. This lack of enjoyment reinforces the feeling of being abused and humiliated. And in the same way, they tend to demean and humiliate others by making them feel that they cannot do it alone without them. They are often inclined to blame themselves for everything and even take the blame for others. Their biggest fear is their freedom. They are afraid to lose the ability to be themselves when humiliated by others. The next wound is abandonment. The wound experienced in the case of abandonment is the second deepest after that of rejection because they both affect the being at a profound level. Most people with the abandonment wound lack tonus. Their body is usually long and slender with a back that becomes rounded and sagging, as if the spine and muscles were not able to keep the body upright. Their body seems to need help to hold on. Those who suffer from abandonment do not feel emotionally nourished enough. They need constant help and support. They think that they cannot do anything on their own and regularly need someone to support them. They often have ups and downs. For a while, they're happy and everything is fine, and suddenly they feel unhappy and sad. They tend to dramatize a lot. The smallest little incident takes on gigantic proportions. In a group, they like to talk about themselves and often brings everything back to them. Besides, they usually seek the opinion or approval of others before making decisions. They can't make up their mind, or they doubt their choice when they don't feel supported by someone else. And when they do something for someone, they do it with the expectation of a return of affection. Their problems give them the gift of attention, and this prevents them from being abandoned. The more a person acts like a victim, the more his or her abandonment wound increases. Their greatest fear is loneliness, since it is directly connected to that feeling of being abandoned. Wow, so profound. Betrayal or treason. The wound of betrayal is intimately related to the wound of abandonment. While abandonment is about being, the wound of betrayal is about having and doing. Their body often exhibits strength and power. In men, shoulders wider than the lower body. In women, lower body larger than the shoulders, like a pear-shaped body. The higher the asymmetry between the upper and lower body, the greater the betrayal wound. Very uncompromising, they want to show others what they are capable of. They often interrupt and respond before a person is finished. When things don't go fast enough to their liking, they become angry. They consider themselves hardworking and responsible. They struggle with laziness. They hate not being trusted and do not always keep their commitments and promises or forces themselves to keep them. They tend to be impatient and intolerant. They confide with difficulty and do not show their vulnerability. People with a betrayal wound have great difficulty accepting the cowardice of others. They also have trouble delegating tasks while trusting others. Among the 5 wounds, the betrayal wounded is the one who has the most expectation towards others because he likes to foresee and control everything. Unlike abandonment wounded, who has expectation of others because they want to be loved and supported in their abandonment injury. The expectations of the betrayal wounded are to check that others do what they need to do well to verify if they can trust them. They firmly state that they believe and expect others to agree with their beliefs. They tend to state their point of view categorically and seeks to convince others at all costs. They think that when someone understands them, they agree with them, which unfortunately is not always the case, right? So their biggest fears are disengagement, separation, disassociation, and denial, which are often experienced in a situation of betrayal. It is essential to know what your wounds are to identify your limits and what obstacles stop you from being your true self. By being aware of your behaviors and wounds, you are getting to know yourself better and also understanding why you tend to behave in specific ways. Maybe one of your wounds is betrayal and you get very insecure in your relationship when your partner doesn't live up to your expectations. By knowing that about yourself, you can learn to improve the relationship and how you react to certain situations. So the first step to heal your wounds is to observe yourself when you feel hurt. Chapter 10 will help you with that, okay? Then you can move on to accept that you aren't perfect and it's okay to recognize the hurt. Last is to admit your fear and allow yourself to move through that fear by being vulnerable and honest with yourself and others. Now, like Henry Ford says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So that's all for today, Queens. I thank you for joining me on this journey. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook, on Toyaparadisa or Tpmindsetcoach. You can also send me an email if you have any questions at toyaparadisa@gmail.com. Stay tuned and have a blessed day. Peace.